Sorry, we're going to match one more.
Prabhupadastakam Matsevyam Anandadam Siddhanta Saraswati Gurupade Gauranga Vani Ratam Seva Samshayato Drisha Manikita Drishyadya Bhavam Ragyam Paripuryanarma Sakita Yasyapi Cha Vishkrita Prabhupadastakam Matseviyamanandadam
Sadaram Prabhupadam Ashayamaye Matsedam Anandadam Sadaram Prabhupadam Ashayamaye Matsedam Anandadam Shinam Yarmita Jivanam Karunaya Vipantare Vedava Srinam Yarmita Jivanam Karunaya Vipantare Vedava Shradham Bhuya Sunama Panya Paramam Suryam Yatha Shobhana Shradham Bhuya Sunama Panya Paramam Suryam Yatha Shobhana Nityananda Daya Padada Haraha Sanghasya Samvardhakam Nityananda Daya Padada Haraha Sanghasya Samvardhakam Sadaram Prabhupadam Ashayamaye Matseyamanandadam Sadaram Prabhupadam Ashayamaye
I forgot to email this. I have written out the verse and my commentary. I need to email it to myself so that I can have it on here. But I forgot to do it. So I need you to go bring my computer.
Okay.
You got a key, right? seva param. Prataram Prabhupadam Ashrayamaye Matsevyamanandadam. Ukulam Bahiranga Vikramarava Astam Gate Lilaya. Margeshu Rajarasi Pratihisham Sampujitam Bhaktita. Sevartam anucharayatam apitam Ashnayra Sauvardanam. Prataram Prabhupadam Ashrayamaye Matsevyamanandadam. Prataram Prabhupadam Ashrayamaye Matsevyamanandadam. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya. I don't need that. Is there a microphone? Can you hear me? No. Oh. Is there any internet in here?
No, we're in a Faraday cage, unfortunately.
Hmm?
We're in a Faraday cage because of the metal walls. So there's no
Okay,
real good
I'll have
signal.
to use this then. Okay. Oh, good enough. Is there a...
Ah, yes.
Bring me a chair, something to put this on. Here. How's that? Not too bad, huh? Yeah. This is not working? Working.
Yeah, but it's a karaoke mic, so it's in and out. That's why it's kind of spotty.
Karaoke.
Yeah, so you could sing your lecture, but
Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurundritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Rajunulambita Bhujo Kanakabhadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godadai Pushpavanto Chitra Sando Tamunudo Vandeham Sri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai. Good evening. Can you bring it up a little bit? No? Yeah, no, that's about right there. So it doesn't work. It does work.
oh, it's in and out, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Hello. Hare Krishna. So, good evening again. Nice to be with you. So we're continuing our discussion of the Prabhupadastakam. We come to the second verse. I want to reflect for a moment, however, back onto the first verse, in which we discussed what Prabhupada referred to as his previous life. By his previous life, he meant his life prior to being initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is the subject of tonight's verse. And so we heard a little bit about Prabhupada's early life, the family, community through which he appeared in the world, its significance, and the prominent influence of Nityananda Prabhu on that community, particularly as well through his, what I've referred to in that verse as his right-hand man, the patron saint of Prabhupada's family, Udarandatta Thakur. And and so the fact that Prabhupada was born in a Vaishnava family is significant. I want to just touch on how he reflected on that himself repeatedly. And that is that he did so by referring to the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. How many of you have read the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? So you already know what I'm going to say, right? The 6th chapter, of course, culminates in the end of a long discussion about yoga on the part of Krishna, which began in the 2nd chapter, I think maybe verse 39 of the 2nd chapter. It begins after Krishna's initial volley, if you will, of a response to Arjun's reticence to participate in the or take up the task at hand, which was formidable. It was so formidable that thinking about it, he dropped his bow. So for Arjuna to drop his bow in fear implies that the task that was before him was more significant than anything that he had encountered in his life as a warrior. And of course, ostensibly, that was a war, and that involved, well, a civil war, let's say, a fratricidal war, a war between persons even of the same family, which is fairly frightening idea. But more so, of course, than that, we understand the Gita in terms of its setting as Arjuna being confronted with his attachments to family and friends that will be taken from us, whether we like it or not. And the solution to that problem being to give up that attachment. It doesn't mean to give them up, your friends, but to give up your attachment to them. And that means to slay, if you will, one's own material, conventional ego. And of course, to do so in the context of the Gita, as Krishna explains, ultimately results in not only the removal of the suffering that derives from attachment, but the happiness that derives from realizing your identity in relation to Krishna, and to find out that there are others there as well. In bhakti alone, amongst these spiritual disciplines, within the context of Hinduism and by extension Buddhism, that really arises out of Hinduism because, after all, Buddha was a Hindu. In bhakti, you can have friends. In bhakti, in Gyan, in yoga, or in, as I said, by extension, also in the Buddhist discipline, one advances with detachment, whereas in bhakti, detachment is a result of one's advancement that is derived from attachment. Attachment to Krishna, and to Krishna's devotees. So we arrive in a destination that is peculiar. The residents of Vrindavan asked Krishna at one point what their destination would be after their demise, as they thought of themselves in a human-like sense, and he showed them Goloka, which was just like Gokul, and they were very happy to know that they would be there with their friends and family members and so on. So this is a very peculiar idea, but in one sense different than the other transcendent disciplines that I mentioned. But again, one of the significant differences is that the path of bhakti is governed by the nirguna, where the path of jnana and yoga are governed by by sattva guna. They don't have the full power and efficacy unto themselves to bring us to transcendence. They need a touch of bhakti. You need not only a passport, you need a visa. Well, something from that side. So when Krishna begins his discourse on yoga in the 39th verse of the second chapter, after having basically said to Arjuna, look, nobody dies. You can't kill anybody. Nobody can kill you. You're not that body-mind complex, which is startling enough. And then he proceeds to explain how you can realize this. That's yoga. And he says, Neha Bikramanasosti pratyavana vidite svalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. This is the beginning of his discourse on yoga that goes over the better part of the second chapter, third chapter, fourth chapter, fifth chapter, sixth chapter. Different types of yoga are mentioned there. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga. But overall, in an overriding sense, Krishna is speaking about bhakti yoga directly and indirectly. What it's not by comparison, directly, and what it is, indirectly, and directly what it is. So he begins with this. What does it mean? He says that Neha Bikramanasosti pratyavana svalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this type of yoga, there's never any loss. Whatever we do under the influence of rajas, tamas, and sattva is not enduring. Is not eternal. But that which is governed and driven by the nirguna, the eternal realm, then that is eternal. So, in this way, he begins his discourse on yoga by referring to bhakti yoga. He's going to teach him, he says now, about yoga. And ultimately, he's saying, and that means, in the full sense of the term, bhakti yoga, or bhakti, which at the end of his discourse on yoga, in the 6th chapter, he says, what, yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratman, shadhavan bhajate yogam same yuktatamo mata. He says, bhakti yoga is so good that it's better than, it's really more than yoga. It's good to be a yogi, but it's better to be a devotee, he says, something to that effect. So, in that 6th chapter, just as we were coming to the conclusion of his teaching about yoga as a discipline, Arjuna feels a little nervous, apprehensive, and he wonders, how is it possible to do this? The task is enormous. What does it constitute in a very basic sense? Well, you have to control the mind. Impossible. He gives a very good example. He says it's like the wind. I think you all can relate to this, right? So you're not alone. Arjuna, the great warrior, has acknowledged that. And what did Krishna say? He didn't say, no, it's easy. He said, yeah, you're right. He said it's true. But abhyasena kunteya vairagena chagriyate. It's possible by practice, which enables one to withdraw from the world of the mind, if you will. And while Arjuna wonders that given how formidable is the task, I may not be successful, Krishna says, no, don't think like that. And he says it very affectionately, tata. Puja Pachita Maharaj poetically used to render this verse from the Gita. There's a verse he used to say, sincerity is invincible. Sincerity is invincible. Tata gachati, my dear one, tata. Yeah. Again, in this path there'd be no loss. So what is the path of bhakti? It's in one sense simply one's sincerity, applying oneself, bhavagrahi janardana. It's the feeling with which we make the offering, with which we chant our japa, with which we do guru seva, and so forth. It's the famous example is there to illustrate the point, right, of Krishna's invitation on the part of Duryodhana to the capital city of Hastinapura. And upon arriving, there was a big greeting with trumpets and kettle drums and so forth. Krishna is arriving, but he ignored it all and went to the house of Vidura. And Vidura was not of royal parentage, not from a royal family, but from a Sudra family, and he wasn't home. But his wife was there. And Krishna said, "Where's Vidura?" She said, "Oh, he's not here." What are you doing here? You come to my house. And Krishna said, "Yeah, and I'm hungry. I've come a long way." And meanwhile, there's a huge royal feast being prepared for him. And they were very careful to make everything just perfect. If you made any mistake, you would be kicked out from the kitchen. All the details were very, very perfect. But she said, "Well, I don't have any. I haven't, they're cooking for you over there." He said, "But I'm hungry now, and I'm here. But I don't have anything." But there was some bananas hanging. He said, "What about the banana?" So she took the banana, and she peeled the banana in ecstasy and gave him the peel and threw away the banana. She did it all wrong. And Krishna ate the peel. He was very satisfied. This is bhakti. Right? It's all about the heart. It's easy. You just have to give your whole heart. That's all. And why is it so? Because that's the only thing that Krishna needs. Because Radha has stolen his heart. So you have to give him your heart, right? His heart has been stolen by his devotees. So you can serve his devotees who are very dear to him. That's where his heart is. And in effect give him the heart that he has lost to them and come within their midst. So Arjuna was assured by Krishna that, as he said in the very beginning, alpa means a little. Just a little effort in this path goes a long way. It's eternal. Whatever you gain from that will remain with you, life after life, and then you build on that. Circumstances will arise in the next life, where again you come to the surface of your trajectory, having been somewhat submerged by the previous karmic trajectory. We have these two influences in the world: the karmic trajectory and the bhakti trajectory. So he tells Arjuna, "No, you'll be successful." And then he says that the nature of this yoga is such that if you practice it and you don't perfect it in this life, then Namarasana, where are you? Where will you go?
I have to consider.
You will go to the celestial realm, he says. He says, you will go to heaven. What is the significance of this? If you practice this imperfectly, you will go to heaven. In order to go there otherwise, you have to perfectly practice the karma marg. And if you make any mistakes in the details, you might get an opposite result, even. But in the bhakti, if you make some external, if you will, mistakes, but your heart is in the right place, and imperfectly perform bhakti, he says you will go to heaven. So we get some idea how much more fruitful and powerful is bhakti in comparison to the karma marg, and how much easier, effectively. There's, of course, you may be thinking, but I don't want to go to heaven. I've heard that's not a good place to go there. You have to come back down and so forth. That's true. You do have to come back. But it's also possible that you'll be there a long time, right? Long time. But because you went there by a different method, without wanting to go necessarily, through the imperfected execution of bhakti, that in the course of your residing there, Krishna's Prakat Leela will again manifest. And when the Prakat Leela manifests in the world, two types of sadhakas enter that Prakat Leela. Those from this life who have attained Swarup Siddhi, before going to Goloka, they go to the Prakat Leela. They take birth there. From earth, in other words. And those who went to heaven by imperfect practice, they come there. So you can go and enjoy there and wait. Wait for the Prakat Leela. Take birth. Very easy. And he said there's another type of devotee who's almost perfected. Instead of going to heaven, they take birth in a Vaishnava family of transcendentalists and pick up where they left off. So, Prabhupada, in relation to what he referred to as we're explaining his previous life before getting initiated, he used to refer to this section of the Gita in the 6th chapter. And he said, in the Gita it is said that if one doesn't perfect their spiritual practice, they'll take birth in a Vaishnava family, and I took birth in a Vaishnava family, and from my very childhood I was devoted to Krishna, and so on and so forth. This is how he explained himself, which on its face contradicts how many of his disciples think of him. But nonetheless is what he said, and may, from another vantage point, be encouraging to us, right? Because sometimes he's presented as so superhuman, you might think, well, sure, he can do, but how can I do that? What is my prospect? So the life of a sadhana siddha, once Prabhupada was asked which was better, the sadhana siddha, who becomes perfect by practice, or the nitya siddha, who never practiced. Prabhupada said, siddha means siddha. That was his answer. Sanatana Goswami gives a different answer. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he says, The sadhana siddhas are better because their bhakti has been tested. Citing the example of Prahlad. This is just the way to talk about these things. Prabhupada's answer is also definitive, right? Perfection means perfection. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita repeatedly underscores the fact that there is no difference between the newcomers, as he sometimes refers to them, sadhana siddhas and nitya siddhas. There's no difference, there's no difference, there's no difference. And repeatedly he mentions this point. What he means is there's no ontological difference between them. There's a difference in their trajectory only. The nitya siddhas are eternally perfect. The sadhana siddhas came from imperfection to perfection. They have a difference in trajectory, but they're not ontologically different. That means that the nitya siddhas are endowed with bhakti, manifest bhakti. If the sadhana siddhas are not ontologically different, they must also be endowed with bhakti, but it's obviously not manifest. It's unmanifest. If that bhakti was not inherent yet unmanifest, and instead was superimposed, this would create or cause vikar in the Atma. Transformation that the Gita emphatically says, and through all schools of Vedanta, the Atma is not subject to. I won't go into this in greater detail, but it's a small but important point to consider. So sadhana siddha, Prabhupada depicted himself as such. Now, as I said, the majority of his disciples, in my experience, they don't like this idea. They don't seem to be familiar with what Prabhupada said. Siddha means siddha, there's no difference, with the emphasis of, an important emphasis of Sanatana Goswami, as I mentioned in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And I've written an entire article on this, a chapter for our forthcoming book on the Tatastha Jiva. But I don't blame them for not being aware of these things. And there's a way in which I believe that their feelings about Prabhupada, which may be accurate, that he's a nitya siddha, can be accommodated, despite the fact of what he said personally. So either way. How's that? That we find amongst Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates so many nitya siddhas, right? Along with Krishna, in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaur Krishna, also comes Balaram, in the form of Nityananda Prabhu. Of course, he's Bhagawan, but also comes Subal Saka in the form of Gauridas Pandit, Lalita Saki in the form of Surup Damodar, right? As I said before, when these devotees in the early Adi Lila, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became a devotee, or began to manifest his devotional life from the life of a pandit, then they had the epiphany that he's Krishna himself. He's giving what no avatar can give. He's giving this Krishna prem, prema madhurya. And this is one of the qualities of Krishna that no other avatar has. Prema Madhurya, Lila Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, Venu Madhurya. So they were wise and they reasoned with me and they experienced internally, he must be Krishna. But then they thought, well, no, they were very wise. Krishna's not alone. If he was here, he would be with his devotees. And then they realized, we are those devotees. And they said, oh my God, where are we now? What is this Leela? You can't go up any deeper than Goloka Vrindavan. If you go deep into Goloka Vrindavan, you end up in Navadvip. You've seen the picture that Prabhupada himself was the art director of, for the cover of his first canto of the Bhagavatam. There is a lotus with Radha and Krishna in the center, and a sky of Vaikuntha planets, of different Kurma and Narasimha and Vamana, different faces of Narayan, faces, the Asankhya, unlimited faces of Bhagwan. But if you look carefully at the picture, a little closer, you see inside there, behind Radha and Krishna, there is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanting in Sankirtan. So inside the lotus of Goloka, there is a Gaur Leela. And we find it in the Bhagavad itself. In the apex, the zenith of the Bhagavad, which must be in the Braja Leela, not the Dwarka Leela, not the Mathura Leela. These Leelas, properly understood, are all reflecting back on the virtues of the Braja Leela. And there in the Braja Leela, in the Rasa Panchadhyaya, the 5 chapters about Madhurya Rasa, the book reaches its apex. And in that Leela, of course, the gopis come and meet Krishna in the dead of night, hearing his flute. Each one heard the flute, and they didn't look and see, is anybody else going to go? They just went. And who they found on the other end, that was their group. Right? They heard the flute, and they just dropped everything. But they found that they weren't alone in that, right? That is the Tripad Vibhuti. That is the greater side. There'll be no loss, or there will be a great loss. Jesus of Nazareth said that if you gain the world at the cost of your soul, and it will be, if it's the world you want, it will be at the cost of your soul. Yeah? And what will you profit? Nothing. The profit will be zero. If you take the one Atma and put it on a scale on one side, and the whole world on the other, the scale will tip in favor of the Atma, its value. The objective world only has the value that we posit. We give it value. We are a unit of value, meaning, purpose. So we can sacrifice the whole world for the self, and we can sacrifice the self for Krishna. And that is bhakti. Not only self-sacrifice, but in the language, poetic speech of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, self-forgetfulness. Not even a calculated, I should do this because it's the right thing to do. That is Vaikuntha. But in Goloka, they don't think like that. You know the famous story of, to illustrate the point, one of them was Krishna speaking to Narad and telling the Muni that he had a headache. And Narad asked, well, how can I solve the problem? Krishna said, get some dust from the feet of my devotees and put it on my head. So Narad thought it was a peculiar remedy, but I'll ask. And of course, every devotee passed the test and said, no, I'm not going to give the dust at my feet on Krishna's head. So he went back empty-handed and happy, content that all the devotees had passed the test. And he told him, no devotee will take the dust from their feet and put it on your head. And Krishna said, no, did you go to Vrindavan? Where? to that rural village in obscurity. This is Nard, from Dwarka. No. And if I go, who should I ask? Durvasa's there. He's a rishi, he's very smart, very educated and enlightened. Is that, you want me to talk with him? No. With the elders of the community? No. With the gopis. Milk maidens only. How insignificant, apparently. And so he went, and he asked, and he told, Krishna has a headache, what can we do? He wants the foot dust from his devotees. We're not devotees. But he told me to ask you. Well, take it. He said, well, don't you know what will happen to you? He said, yeah, we will go to hell for that. But if it will solve his headache, then. So this is Braj Bhakti. You can desire to go to Goloka Vrindavan if you understand what it is, how desireless it is. In the terms of desire here, kama, representing a selfish orientation. It's a selfless orientation. And unless there is more, much more. Right? So Prabhupada used to cite this verse, and as I say, although he speaks of himself in doing so as a sadhana siddha, some of his disciples, most of them, like to think of him as a nitya siddha. So how can we harmonize this? In the Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when the devotees realized we are his devotees, we are his associates, they were siddhas in a land where they're in a Leela, where their role was that of sadhakas. Sadhaka Siddhabhumi is called. The land where sadhakas, siddhas, are playing the role of sadhakas. This is the Yogumaya influence. So the devotees found themselves becoming enlightened, if you will, and conduct. What does it say? Srinivasacharya Purvaka Nama Ganatibi Sankhya Purvaka Nama Ganatibi. Glorifying Rup, Sanatan, Raghunadas, Sankhya Purvaka Nama Ganatibi. They in a measured way, they chanted their Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana, their rounds on beads, and they paid obeisances to Vaishnavas, and they conducted themselves just like sadhakas, and they felt that they were sadhakas, even though they were siddhas. And so if you were to talk to them, they would say, yes, in my previous life, therefore, I was born in the Vaishnava family. Therefore, I was born in the Dham. Srila Prabhupada Jai. So we go from his previous life to what he called his present life, which was a second birth, if you will, at with the fatherhood of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Now I want to read from you. It's a little awkward to have to do this from here, but bear with me. Some sections from the commentary. And this is one in which Prabhupada is speaking about himself in this regard. And it's very endearing. I think it can encourage us. Whether he's Nitya Siddha or Sadhana Siddha, we don't really care. doesn't matter to us. Whichever works better for you, to inspire you. But to look at it for a moment from the sadhana siddha side, Prabhupada says, in 1922, I was very much engaged in the Congress activity, referring to the political party in Bharat, in India, the Congress Party. I was very much a devout follower of Mahatma Gandhi. At that time, I was a manager also of a very big chemical concern in Calcutta. Sounds rather ordinary, similar to our own lives. I hope you're not too politically involved. It's difficult not to be to some extent in the climate of the world today, but to have an opinion at least. So Prabhupada, talking about himself, continues. He says, one of my friends informed me that, quote, one saintly person has come, let us go and see. At that time I was a young man and I did not care very much about so-called saintly persons. Because in our house, my father used to receive so many sannyasis, but some of them were not to the standard. And due to my association with college friends in younger days, I lost my faith practically, although I was born in a Vaishnava family. This is not what you typically hear, that Prabhupada said this, Prabhupada said that. Everything Prabhupada said is absolute in all respects, and these kind of somewhat exaggerated perspectives, if you will, that foster a fundamentalist kind of orientation to bhakti that does not it can get in the way of our growth if it's not if those kind of statements are true but properly understood, if you will. The absolute of the Guru and the relative of the Guru and side and so forth, to balance them out. But Prabhupada continues, he said, but when this friend took me to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, he immediately asked me, you are an educated young boy, why don't you take up Lord Chaitanya's message and preach in the Western world? At that time I argued with him. We are a dependent nation. Who is going to listen to our message? But he defeated my argument. He was a learned scholar and I was a teeny boy. So I agreed, chuckling, Prabhupada said, that I was defeated. After finishing our visit with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, I got the impression that here is a person who has taken Lord Chaitanya's message very seriously. Now it will be preached. Prabhupada spoke this on the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta in Gorakhpur in 1971. Prabhupada didn't often speak about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Neither was he a member of the mission in an ashram sense, because he was a householder. But this is a candid moment in which he speaks about their first meeting and how it had an impression on him. And it was 11 years later that he was initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada mentions here, as we've heard, that at the time that he met the Thakur, he was a staunch follower of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, of course, had a powerful approach to something that was kind of overdue, if you will, the liberation of the native residents of Bharat from British oppression. This was something that Bhaktivinoda Thakur did not give that much thought to himself. He thought, well, he framed it something like this: we are their older brothers. We should be kind to them. After all, we are old and they're taking care of us. They're providing train something and other things and material facilities and so forth in our old age. And by our old age, he meant our wisdom, our spiritual wisdom that is comparatively absent in them. They can take care of us, and we can share with them our wisdom by setting an example of putting it into practice ourselves, which in the least you should do in your old age, right? When you really can't do much of anything else. Anyway, right? Now it's made even easier for us by modern technology, because AI can do anything but bhakti. So it leaves you just for bhakti. Is our solution to that problem. So you can imagine what was the pull of Gandhi on the minds and hearts of young men and women of Bharat at the time. Not only was its time had come, but he was the messenger, if you will. He was the leader that would take them over the line, so to speak. And his approach, although in pursuit of secular, if you will, liberation, was drawn nonetheless from the Gita largely. The Gita lends itself to many different interpretations, social, political, psychological. This may be the case. And that in one sense, I used to think that those are all wrong interpretations, but later I realized, well, it also gives good advice on all levels, such as the Gita. Ultimately, it says that provides a comprehensive solution to the world as a problem rather than to the problems of the world, but it does the latter as well. And so Gandhi, I mean, here's how many young men and women at the time, the age of some of you here, or maybe a little younger, understood something about the Gita, right? All of them. And so for it to be framed in the context of the Gita just gave it that much more power and strength, and the whole nation was swept up by this. I mean, if you talk about it today in detail, you'll be swept up by it. Goodness, what a powerful, this is exhilarating, and they rose up, and with non-violence, even some of them losing their lives in pursuit of their freedom. Gandhi wanted freedom, and the British said, "You are not fit for freedom." Then Gandhi said, "We may not be fit, but we want freedom to do the wrong thing then. But we want freedom." It's very powerful. In an ordinary sense, in a material sense. You hear the Polish residents who were occupied for so many decades by the Russian influence. And at some point, what was his name? Boris Yeltsin or something, or I don't know, I can't remember. So, what?
Yeltsin, yes, Boris. But here, Lech Wałęsa is in Poland.
Yeah, stood up, and there was, what is it? Perestroika or something?
Oh, Boris Yeltsin.
Anyway, and Poland was liberated. There must have been a celebration. Whole nation swept up in this. And someone is going to come along and say, that's not important. It's meaningless. And this was the message of Bhaktisiddhanta. The whole nation was swept up in the pursuit of Swaraj, political freedom from political oppression, if you will, right? And Bhaktisiddhanta's message was slavery. I'm saying put this freedom down and take up slavery. In the United States, before it was the United States, there was a famous statement from the colonies, the British colonies, no taxation without representation. You cannot tax us as a government unless we have representation from the colonies in the government. We will be taxed only if we have representation there. No taxation without representation. And Sridhar Maharaj said, all taxation and no representation. That is bhakti. How are you going to market that in the climate of India under the inspired influence of Mahatma Gandhi? And that was the voice of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he could turn the head of Prabhupada. And he turned the head of Sridhar Maharaj. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj also was a follower of Gandhi. Prabhupada was critical of Gandhi afterwards, coming under the influence of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he corresponded with him. I don't know if Gandhi ever responded. Probably not. He was a busy man. But Prabhupada wrote to him. Prabhupada wrote to him for two reasons. Because he was so influential, and because Prabhupada had actually great respect for him on the lower level. And so while most of his disciples, Prabhupada's disciples, heard how he would criticize Gandhi, not as a person, but his ideal, and where it falls short, right, in terms of a comprehensive solution to the oppression, the oppression from our mind and senses and so forth, which is really what the problem is. But on one occasion, Prabhupada went to Agra with one disciple for some service in relation to his mission. And there is a tall statue of Gandhi. And Prabhupada paid the Dandavat Pranam on the street to the Mahatma. So I just bring this up to show you the kind of the balance of Prabhupada, if you will. You could criticize Gandhi's worldview and still have respect for all that it took for him to do that, what he did, and based on some understanding of Krishna's words in the Gita, anyway. So, because sometimes we see this representation of Prabhupada that everybody else is bad, right? And in Maya, and Prabhupada shows by this example a more wholesome, if you will, perspective. So I bring it up for your kind consideration. But the point here is then further that the voice of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I mean, we're talking about Prabhupada, my Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, one time removed from Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and how extraordinary he was, what his campaign became at the behest of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and how we're all here as a result of it. If you look at this carefully, even not too carefully, it is an extraordinary chapter in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. People say that these religious groups and traditions, they exaggerate the lives of their founders, the life of the Buddha, the life of Jesus. He walked on water. They made that up. They exaggerated. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did this, and Nityananda Prabhu did that. The miracles, if you will. The miracles are thought to be just exaggerations, and then they're, over time they get further exaggerated and so forth. Because if this was not the case, why don't we see those in the miracles today? Well, we did. in the form of his divine grace. This is a miracle what he did. You can't imagine it. He slept for 4 hours a night, and circled the globe like 12 times on airplanes that had smoking and non-smoking sections. I had my experience of that. And he wrote 30 volumes of books, about 300, 400 pages each, while doing that. And corresponding with disciples to the extent that there are volumes of books published of his correspondence as well. I mean, I'm an author. I know what it takes to write a book, and that's why I stayed by myself at Audarya. Largely alone there, with a little assistance or quite a bit, actually, kindness of Gurnishta and Brindaranya. But to travel at such extent, and every morning, there he was. Rise, chant japa, take a philosophical walk with his disciples, come and have the darshan of Radha Krishna, give a Bhagavatam class, take prasadam, manage his mission, darshan in the evening, and it was like clockwork. So controlled, his senses, and nothing could bring that out more than his glance of benediction. His senses were so controlled that when he looked at you, all of that control, if you will, the power that comes from controlling the senses to go taking them inward, to bring out the Atma and its swabhav. It's like all of that power was in his glance. It would look right into your soul. This is a quality of some devotees that Sri Baladev Vidibhushan speaks about, the power of a glance, I would say, of benediction. The most powerful feature of his physicality, if you will, was his glance. After all, he was very short, about 5 foot, maybe 6 or something like that. He wasn't muscular and powerful in, in a physical sense. He walked with his head high, as if he was like, ruling the world, so to speak, in humility. Always deferring to, I simply following the order of my Guru Maharaj. It is only the blessing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. During this period that Prabhupada came to the Americas and Europe, there were other sadhus coming from India. It was a special time. But if you look at the history, it's one of the reasons why Indian philosophy is not as popular now as it was then, because the emissaries, the representatives, showed themselves to be morally compromised. Prabhupada wasn't walking on water or flying on a magic carpet. Once he was asked, if you're a Swami, why don't you come here on a magic carpet, flying carpet? Prabhupada said, because in Rome, do as the Romans. I'm coming on your terms. You fly planes, so I'm flying in a plane. There was some miracles, of course, that he performed. But I think it is more substantial to emphasize the harnessing of his of one's humanness. It is said in the Bhagavad that tasmat guru prapadyeta jignashu shreya uttamam. Shabda parecha nishnatam brahmani upashamashrayam. With regard, this verse describes the disciple and the guru. Shreya uttam, the disciple wants the ultimate good, Doesn't want to solve the problems of the world, wants to solve the problem that the world of the mind is. A comprehensive solution. And the Guru, Shabde Pare, she has understood the scripture from a theistic pare, from a theistic vantage point. Shabde Pare cha Nishnatam. And understood it inside, Nishnatam. Outside, upside, downside, all sides, and in relation to all the arguments from other philosophical perspectives current in the times. Shabde pare nishnatam and brahmani upashamashrayam. And standing on the ground of being, he or she has mastered their humanity, conquered the senses and the mind. There was no question of being morally compromised. I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about. I was sitting with Prabhupada once in Hyderabad, and 50,000 people came to a Pandal program that we had arranged for Prabhupada to speak. In South India, a lot of learned Vaishnavas and saintly people, religious people, and so forth. 50,000 people. And after Prabhupada was speaking on the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, the teachings of Rishabdev, the importance, there it comes out the importance of sadhu sangha, and Mahat Kripa, the mercy of great souls, and so forth. And after the talk, Prabhupada entertained questions. And one fellow said, Swamiji, have you performed any miracles? And Prabhupada said, yes. I was sitting to his right. He said, this boy and this one, they've given up sex. That is my miracle. And the crowd went, Bhishma. Oh my God. How extraordinary. So this is no small thing, right? And to come from India as a sadhu with the best of intentions, and then be fawned after by beautiful young people with money and education and so forth. Mostly they were men, so there were many women liking them in so many ways, giving them money. Their lives changed dramatically in terms of external circumstances and so forth, as it did for Prabhupada. But there was a significant difference, and he was never affected by that in a way that would constitute a moral lapse, if you will. You know, the image of the Guru has been soiled considerably. And within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, of course, as well. So such is the power of the world, right? Such is the rarity of someone like Prabhupada. Akshno phalam, what is it? Tadisha gata sangha, jiva phalam tadisha kirtanam hi. Sudulava Prabhupada hiloke. Rare to find a person, a Mahatma, like him in the world. There's a book, I think it's called Miracle on Second Avenue, something like that. Miracle on Second, where he started his campaign. I mean, this is an unbelievable chapter in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and there are many fantastic chapters, of course, but this is one of them, and we're like part of it. We're the appendix to the chapter, footnote to the chapter ourselves. It's a great blessing. But the verse, which, well, I didn't even read it, so let me read the verse that we're discussing tonight concerning Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's influence on Prabhupada. It's verse 2. Shri Siddhanta Saraswati Guru Pade Gaurangavani Ratam. Sheltered in Sharanagati. at the feet of Siddhanta Saraswati and completely devoted at his guru's behest to the seva of disseminating Gauravani. By the merciful glance of Nayanamani, his Sakyabhava was enriched with Madhurya, manifesting his Narma, Sakha, Bhava Visheshana. I take refuge in Prabhupada, the perfected one, Tratam and Savior, to become his Seva Mayananda. It's really my Savior, and his Savior is Mayananda. So, we've been talking about the external life of Prabhupada, but the verse seems to be about his internal life. Suddenly we're talking about what? What are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and how he changed the mind of Prabhupada, how powerful he was. And so what was his idea? We compared it to slavery, divine slavery. We gave the gopis as an example, right? All the Brajbasis. They love him in self-forgetfulness, right? Completely selfless. Not even any spiritual selfishness is the way we could characterize their ideal and their life in the Leela. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was preoccupied with, the Parama Purushartha, Prem Prayojan, this kind of, the freedom that derives from this kind of divine slavery. After all, Krishna told the gopis in Kurukshetra that people approach me for different reasons. Mayi bhakti bhutanam amritatvaya kalpate. People approach me for things. So, I give them things. People approach me to get away from things. They're a little smarter and thoughts about them, and I give them that also. But you aren't concerned with things or thoughts about them. You're concerned with me and what I want and what I'm about only. And I'm purchased by that. Right? So there's a freedom that comes in that. After all, if someone comes to visit you and you know, oh, this is what he wants, okay, how close are you going to, get to him? If he wants something from you, take something from you. He wants something that you have. He wants what you know. I might take your knowledge and I'm going to use it for my purpose. A little more noble, but still. They don't. If the visitor doesn't want anything, just wants to sit, just be in your presence. Well, come on in. That's very different, right? So this is Vrindavan, right? This is Swayam Bhagavan. When Bhagavan wants to be himself, he has to be around people who don't want anything from him, right? So this was the ideal of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when it takes a particular shape. Within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, this ideal of prem culminates in a particular type of romantic love for Krishna that we see embodied in the gopis. Among them, there are two basic types of love, and they're described by different terms in different texts. Jiva Goswami describes them as Sambhog Echamayi and Tadbhav Echamayi. It's sometimes described as Kantabhav, as opposed to Sakibhav, or Tad Anumodana Bhav, of which there are two types, Sakshad and Lesha. So let me go into it a little bit here. Kantabhav means to become to be like Radha, who entertains the romantic overtures of Krishna and serves him in that capacity. Leading ladies within Vrindavan. The fullest expression of which is Radha. They all being a manifestation of a particular aspect of her bhav. She is all of those bhavs together. Mahabhava Swarupini. One aspect of her bhav, and her whole being is bhav. Let's take her beauty, the beauty of Radharani. Where will we find the beauty of Radharani separate from Radharani? Do you know the answer? No. That is Rupa Manjari, because Rupa also means beauty. He is the form of the beauty of Radha personified. So these are all these different devotees, some of whom are gopis, some of whom are competitors of Radha because they also acquiesce to the romantic overtures of Krishna. So this is Sambho Gechamai. And Tadbha Gechamai is another kind of Madhurya Ras, where the gopi does not desire to have a romantic union with Krishna, but to serve one of the leading ladies, to facilitate, to help her. And of course, in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, this is all focused on on Radha. We call it by another name sometimes Radha Dasya, because it's a form of Madhurya Rasa in which the romantic attraction for Krishna, which is present, is subjugated by a spirit of service to the one who better serves that purpose. Radha. There's some math to this now. Also, to the bhav, to the feeling. What is the math? No one is more dear to Krishna than Radha. I want to endear myself to Krishna. No one is more dear than Radha. So let me serve Radha. Then how dear I will be to Krishna. So it is Krishna-centered, if you will. But this is sometimes called Manjari Bhav, because Radha is the vine, and if you water the vine, then the blossoms come, manifest. Blossom, Manjari means blossom bhakti, so to speak. So this and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on Rupa's explanation of these two types of Madhurya Rasa in Bhakti Rasamrita Synthesis, and the primary type is this tadbhav. Tadanumodana means sympathetic to the romantic pursuit of Krishna, which is really focused on Radha. To be sympathetic, to assist in that. So this is the kind of Madhurya Rasa that is most prominent in Gaudiya Sampradaya and embodied in Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and so forth. And relative to our discussion, in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as well. This was his ideal. Now, let me read you something about that for a moment. How do we know that this was the ideal of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur? Well, you can say, that is the highest ideal. That's for all Gaudiya Vaishnavas. You have a hard time supporting that statement, that it's the highest ideal, but yes, objectively speaking. But that all Gaudiya Vaishnavas pursue that, we would have a very hard time supporting that. I could give you 1,000 examples to the contrary. Even while they are still in the minority. After all, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to taste Radha Bhav. So by being a maidservant of Radha, that's the closest you can get to that. But all of us, as I've said before, have a swabhav. This is mentioned by Krishnadas Kaviraj, that the Atma Swabhav of the jivas is service to Krishna. One could say, well, that's a generic kind of explanation. Every jiva is a servant, dependent servant of Bhagavan. But if you study carefully the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you won't come to that conclusion. And let us turn for a moment to Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the seminal text of all our Gaudiyas. Sanatana Goswami's contribution. He uses the term repeatedly. Swabhav in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, at the very opening of the second canto of the text in particular. He says, Swabhav means an inherent nature. Inherent nature is something that you can't give to somebody. That would be a contradiction, right? So every devotee has his own swabhav, and therefore they have their own place in transcendence, whether it be in Dwarka or Mathura or Vrindavan or Ayodhya, Vaikuntha or Goloka. In other words, he explains swabhav in such a way as to that is clear. He's speaking about a specific devotional orientation that's part of your very being, and it is your trajectory to arrive at. Now, the reason that we're all attracted here, largely and for the most part, is because we have a trajectory that corresponds with what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is prominently talking about, the virtues of Goloka, Madhurya Rasa, and of course, Sakya Rasa, which is embodied in Sri Nityananda, which the whole sampradaya begins with that. We talked about Udarananda Thakur. There were 12 cowherd friends of Krishna that descended, picked up by Nityananda Prabhu and engaged, and the whole of the Saptagram community was a whole Sakyarasa community. Before the idea of Manjari Bhav even surfaced through the Goswamis, this was very prominent, right? So sometimes this face of bhakti will show itself. As we'll see as we continue this, Prabhupada is a prominent example. We already heard something about his former life, which leads us to believe, wow, he was born in a community of Sakyaras devotees, actually. Patron saint of his family was one of the Dwadasa Gopals, one of Krishna's eternal cowherd friends, and so forth. But now we're hearing something else. He was initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta, and his Bhaktisiddhanta was in Madhurya Rasa and the Tadbhav type, Manjari Bhav. Sounds like a problem, maybe. The disciple has, we're kind of, it seems like the disciple has a different bhava than the guru. Let's read a little bit. How do we know, first of all, we'll get to that. How do we know that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was so disposed? Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, in a letter to his disciple, Kunja Bihari Das, who later became Tirtha, Bhaktivilas Tirtha, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada wrote cryptically about his inner spiritual life, identifying it as the above preferred, which we just talked about, Madhurya Rasa, that particular form of Manjari Bhav, Radha Dasya, we'll call it. He himself was in many ways introverted, Bhaktisiddhanta, while Kunja Bihari Das was an extrovert and served as the manager of all of the Thakur's preaching efforts. In Kunja Bihari's absence, Bhaktisiddhanta wrote to him, imploring him to return, and did so with allusions to both his and his disciples' inner life. Pujapad Biyashira Dev Goswami comments on the letter thus. So just to frame it for you again, Bhaktisiddhanta was inspired, but he wasn't a manager. I can relate to that. He was inspired and he could inspire others, but when it comes to managing people and things, that's not my thing. And it wasn't his thing either. Kunja Bihari Das, one of his early disciples, however, he saw this should be managed, this should be organized, this should be distributed somehow. We got to put a corporation around this, and that was Gaudiya Math. So he had a prominent role. He was the manager of the whole mission. And nonetheless, at some point in the mission, he went perhaps back to his family for a short period of time. He was MIA, missing in action. And so his guru wanted him back. And in a very esoteric way, he made that clear. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj describes the letter thus. Excuse me. You finding this interesting? Our Guru Maharaj was a sannyasin and not very inclined to meet many persons for preaching purposes, etc. He had a secretive nature. So he felt disturbed by the absence of Tirtha Maharaj and expressed something about his internal relationship in a letter to him that was later published. There we find that Prabhupada identified himself as Nayanamani Manjari. I am a young girl, Nayanamani. Nayanamani Manjari is my name. And Vrishabhanu Nandini, Radharani, likes me very much and always tries to keep me in her vision. I am not very expert in discharging my duties, but Bimala Manjari can help me to do my quota of service given by Radharani. But at present, Bimala Manjari has become apathetic towards Radharani and left me. I am not able to discharge my little quota of duties that Radharani expects of me, therefore. This is a rather startling letter, if you will, in which he speaks of himself and identifies himself in Manjari Bhav. In the verse, we've used different words. Prabhupada has chosen them for the sake of meter and poetics and so forth. I think we said Drishamani. So same meaning. Nayana Mani, as he describes it here, the jewel, money. I am a young girl. Nayanamani Manjari is my name. And in the context of revealing that, he looks at his blooped disciple, and forgive me, Tirtha Maharaj, but for a moment anyway, it's a term we used to use in ISKCON. Blooped, I guess it means like into the water, of Maya or something like that. In terms of his how he saw him internally, also in Manjari Bhav. So this was something that echoed throughout the Gaudiya Math, and by which it was definitively concluded this is the ideal in general of Bhaktisiddhanta, and these are the specifics of his identity. Point here to be noted is there is no pramana or evidence that is stronger than the words of the Guru himself or herself with regard to this. And this is just like one letter. It's a big letter, but it's just one letter. Otherwise, Saraswati Thakur was rather tight-lipped about this. Very tight-lipped about this. Not so tight-lipped about the general idea of the ideal of Madhurya Rasa, this particular type of Madhurya Rasa, but the specifics with regard to his own personal participation in that, he was very tight-lipped about it. But from this alone, the whole of Gaudiya Math come to this conclusion, right? Now, what's interesting here, and why we're talking about it, is because in the verse it points out that Prabhupada was of a different bhava. How do we know that? Well, we published a whole book about that. It's called Oh My Friend, Oh My Friend. We should read it together sometime, but it's a compilation of all of the things that Prabhupada said without trying to talk about his inner life, but nonetheless made clear and that definitively, once and for all, if you will, that he idealized Sakyabhav. He didn't talk about the details of his persona, but what his ideal was. Let me cite I think I've got an example here. Maybe not. Maybe it's in the next verse. At any rate, the point here that we're raising, which is in the verse, is that Prabhupada had a different bhava than Bhaktisiddhanta. So how do we understand this? We understand that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not give Manjari Bhav to all his disciples. In fact, he didn't give any Bhav to any disciple. Because why? Bhava is not a thing that you can give. It's not a thing. I can give you it's like knowledge. Bhava is a kind of knowledge. Gyan Vishesh. The Vishesh is a particular combination of Hladini and Samvit. It's a noetic bliss. I can't give you noetic bliss. I can, if I love someone, not how I feel about someone, can I give you those feelings? Can I take them and put them inside of you? No. I can say, I love him. I love her. And I can talk, she's like this, she's like this, she's like this, she's like that. And that may be a catalyst for feelings of love for that person to come in you, especially if that person is Krishna, who you have as your swabhav, an inherent but unmanifest relationship with, you have love for. The jiva has the capacity to love. You cannot, it has a purpose. This is the phrase of Bhaktisiddhanta or Bhaktivinoda, Jaiva Dharma. It has a purpose. You can't give a purpose and call it one's dharma, one's nature. The nature of the jiva is to love Bhagwan. And each jiva is an individual. We say that all jivas are equal. That's true. But they're all different, right? Because two things cannot be exactly the same and be different. Are we all, as Atmas, I'm saying, we're different karmically, but we're all equal spiritually, but we're all individual units of spiritual content. No two things can be exactly the same and at the same time be different. We're not all the same. We're all the same in the broad sense, right? And therefore we're attracted to different types of sadhusanga. If someone becomes a Sri Vaishnava, we don't lament, or a Madhva Vaishnava, or an Embarki. We think, well, that's where they belong. Just see, they're going there. They're developing samskars. We develop samskars, impressions, based on our swabhav. So samskars have, a samskar means an impression, right? But it's not an impression that you put like a wood block and you make an impression on it. Samskar is more our response to an environmental influence. It's our response. So we can sit here and all have the same experience, environmental experience, but respond to it differently from a karmic point of view, right? And also from a spiritual point of view, based on our swabhav. And therefore, when we have the external influence or environmental influence that corresponds with our swabhav, it forms samskars. So where are the samskars coming from? They're actually coming from the swabhav. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a nice example. If you drill into the earth, you will find water. Does the drilling cause the water, or does the water cause the drilling? The water causes the drilling. If the water wasn't there, no one would drill, right? The drilling is not causing the water, it's uncovering the water that's already there. The water is driving us to drill, if you will. And so, and also, I should mention this point, that these samskars are not just like the wind blows, touched you, now I'm touched by Vatsalya Bhav, now that's what I'll be. These samskars come in very intense sadhana. Sadhana becomes very intense. When you really give yourself to sadhana, then these samskars will start to form. And then bring out your swabhav. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he did not give Manjari Bhav to everybody. He didn't give any Bhav to anyone. And his own teaching is a testament to this. Let me read what he said. He wrote this to one of his female disciples. I think she might have been from Europe. All those esoteric truths that are revealed solely through one's advancing practice of chanting the holy names are to be considered the introduction to one's swarup, one's true spiritual identity. The revelations one has while submerged in chanting the holy names with a sincere heart should be humbly presented to a sadhu and a guru so that one's conception may be refined and approved. Those who attain Swarup Siddhi or realization of their eternal spiritual form and identity come to realize their eternal identity of their own accord through sadhana. Sri Gurudev merely assists them in making progress in realizing these topics on the path of bhajan. So the Guru is like this, right? Making, I love him. He is giving aparoksha gyan, indirect knowledge. Knowledge is, how is knowledge depicted graphically? If you want to depict knowledge graphically in someone, this light, okay, so it's like the light bulb went on, right? That is paroksha gyan, direct knowledge. Knowledge belongs to the subjective realm, not to the objective realm. We can objectify knowledge and indirectly represent it and serve then as a catalyst to the light going on. Right? This is the definition of sadhana bhakti given by Rupa Goswami. That practice by which bhava, that is eternally existing, manifests within the heart. How can something manifest in the heart if it's not already there in an unmanifest condition? It can't. That's logically impossible. The Guru doesn't therefore impart bhav, but imparts the teachings, exemplifies them in a compelling way, and serves as the catalyst for that bhav to manifest. And what bhav will manifest? That is the bhav that corresponds with your swabhav, your inherent nature. So the point we're making here is that and of course it's supported by Bhaktivinoda in his famous book Jaiva Dharma. He gives a very nice example of two students who studied the Bhagavad very carefully and practiced. And after some time, Gurudev said to them, "So, what are you getting from that? What is your ruchi?" And they were preoccupied with the Bhagavad. Devotees come to see me, you know. They want to have darshan. They want to tell me about what they're about, largely. Just giving you my perspective. I'm doing this, this happened to me, I'm doing that. I asked them, what are you reading? What are you reading? So sometimes they give the right answer and they're reading something. Much appreciated. That's what it means to have a relationship with the Guru. What are you reading? And what did you get from that? You know, we have our Sunday call and the questions. Sometimes they're asking, and the book says this, and my question is that. I like those questions. I'm pretty good at giving a definitive answer to the question. But when they say, well, my mother did this to me, and it's still hanging, it's still over my head, and I'm compassionate, I can relate to it, I'm sympathetic, empathetic. I had a grandmother who was, a problem. I was the second son. She wanted the second to be a girl. The third was a girl. And she lived with us. And when my parents went out, and we were under her care, and she had one of the first, black and white televisions. But she wouldn't let me come in and watch. Only the other two. But my mom knew that, so I became the favorite. My mother. But we all have some issues, that come from, so many influences and so forth. And life is difficult, so I don't ignore those questions, and I feel, empathetic. But I can't give I can't give an absolute answer to those questions. I can give some relative answer, or I can express my empathy, and that's pretty much all you need, right? You just need to, you don't really want a solution. You just want to be heard. Just want to be heard. There's a scripture, there's a scriptural text I came across some time ago, I forget where it's from, that it makes this point. That if you have troubles, you just need to voice them to others, and then you'll feel better. Especially if it's someone who you care about, and cares about you. You get that confirmation. So, but what are you reading? Right? This is important. And so they were reading Bhagavad. They had a taste for the Bhagavad. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavad itself says that Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Slokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. They were Naishtiki and Ruchi. They were moving from the stage of Nishta to Ruchi. They liked the Bhagavatam. They weren't reading because Gurudev said we should read. They were reading because they liked the book. They liked it. They were starting to live in the text. Do you want to go into the Prakat Leela of Krishna? It is there in the Bhagavatam. Samadhina nusmarata vicheshtitam. Narad said to Vyas, enter into Samadhi. You're qualified for that. And then write something. That is the Bhagavad. You wonder, did Krishna physically do that? in the Samadhi of Vyas he did. That is the Bhagavad. That is the Prakat Leela. Enter there. What does the Bhagavad itself say? In the first canto, it says, with the passing of Krishna, what is it? Speak louder. Krishna Swadhama Bhagate Dharma Jnana Divisaha Kalo Nasta Dishamesha Puranarko Dunoditaha. With the passing of Krishna, who is the embodiment of knowledge and so forth, where will we get shelter in Kali Yuga? And the answer is Puranarko Dunodita, through this Purana itself. It is the book avatar, right? And I am the book distribution avatar. So I'm trying to inspire you that you might take up the reading of the Bhagavad. Like these two students mentioned, the two protagonists of Bhaktivinoda's Jaiva Dharma. And so they said, one said, I like the idea of that when a calf parts from the herd, I will get the order from Subal to go and bring him back. And Gurudev said, very nice. You will be in Sakyabhav. The other said, I like the idea of assisting Lalita Sakhi and helping to bring Radha and Krishna together. Oh, then you will pursue this bhav. So the Guru is not giving the bhav. The Guru is coaching us. And he may see things, she may see things that we don't see. And then guide us in such a way that this will gradually manifest. The word manifest is very important. It's baked right into Rupa Goswami's definition of sadhana bhakti. He differentiates between sadhana and bhava bhakti. Sadhana is this practice of hearing and chanting and so forth that we do that becomes the catalyst by which bhava manifests. To put it in Bengali, as yes, but that is a Bengali way of saying that. But what does Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami say? How does he say it? How does he put Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Sanskrit verse defining sadhana bhakti into Bangla?
Nikta Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Koroye Uda.
Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem. That prem, that bhav, that is eternally existing. Sadhya Kabunai. It's not something that is a product of what we do. Like in the karmic realm, we do things and a result is created that wasn't there previously. If prem was like that, then our goal would not be eternal. It has to be already existing. We know that it is. It's embodied in the Nitya Siddhas. We see examples of it. It's eternally existing. And those Nitya Siddhas are not ontologically different than the sadhanas who will become siddhas, sadhakas who will become siddhas. Their bhava has to manifest. This is the verse about how it manifests. Nitya Siddha, Krishna Prem, Sadhya Kabunai. Shravanadi. Shravan means hearing. Adi means etc. Hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Dasyam, Bandhanam, Asyam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam, all of it. All these angas of bhakti, right? Shravanadi, what is the result of this? Shuddha chitte. The chitta becomes shuddha. It becomes cleared of all material samskars and kore udai. And this bhava, then, this nityasiddha prem, this bhava, it udai. it awakens, it arises. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, 17 different times describing how this prem comes about. Krishna's Kaviraj uses the word udai, upai. It awakens, it arises. This is his Bengali interpretation of prakash, to manifest. The word used by Rupa Goswami. Sadhana bhakti is that by which the eternal existing prem manifests in the heart of the devotee. And again, it cannot manifest if it's not there in unmanifest condition to begin with. So Jiva Goswami explains that the seed for the bhava is sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha is what? It is an anga, a limb of the body of sadhana bhakti. Ado shraddha tata sadhu sangha. Right? By sadhu sangha, our bhakti grows. We don't grow by detachment, we grow by sangha. And detachment results from that. By good association, we grow. So this is the seed. He cites a verse from Bhagavatam in the 10th canto to support it. And in the commentaries, it's revealed that this seed means that a change in orientation from an outward orientation to a basic inward orientation. In this way, sadhu sangha becomes a catalyst for the manifestation of that eternally existing bhav in due course. The guru, the initiating guru of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. He told the Thakur, when he initiated him and gave the name Shri Varshavanavi Daitya Das, that you will realize your swarup in the syllables of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Do you think it's possible to become perfect by chanting Hare Krishna? Or do we have to add something else to that? Saraswati Thakur said himself in his poem, Vaishnav K, he said what? Kirtana prabhave smarana svabhave. Someone will say, oh no, you have to live at Radhakund and meditate. Chanting is not enough. Chanting is not. Oh, that's Swami Bhakti Vedanta. He gave Vaidya Bhakti, he gave chanting, but the Rag Bhakti, now I will give that. I heard one fellow say that I will come and give the Rag Bhakti. Then the real teaching of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come. So chanting is not enough. Have you ever read Shikshastakam? What is the sadhana of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? It's Nam Sankirtan. It's all about, only about Sankirtan. But the point is what? There is a place for Smaranam. What is the place? Kirtanas Prabhave Smarana Svabhave. That is the power of Kirtan. The force of Kirtan, its efficacy is such that it will result in meditation. It will capture your mind in a way that you would be less likely able to by any other method. This Shravanam Kirtan, we get Bhagavad Shravan, Bhagavad Kirtan, Nam Kirtan, in particular, is the emphasis of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So don't underestimate the power of this, the syllables of the Hare Krishna mantra. But what about Diksha? Diksha is there. Diksha mantra. But what is the purpose of the Diksha mantra? It's to help us to chant the Maha mantra. This is clearly stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Pujapad Sridhar gave example of two circles. One inside the other. The large circle is Harinam. At its bottom it goes everywhere, to anyone, man, woman, child, elephant, alligator. Right? And on the upper circle it goes Krishna Charan, to the feet of Krishna. Inside that circle is another circle. That is the Gopal mantra. 18-syllable Diksha mantra. It seeks some qualification that Harinam does not seek. When that qualification is attained, that adhikar, at the Guru's discretion, through the medium of chanting the name, then she will give Diksha mantra. But that circle takes one, sangsar mochan, Krishnadas says, to liberation, to bhava. Its efficacy has been reached. What could be a better example than the protagonist of the second canto of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar? You know Gopakumar chanted his mantra. It was a 10-syllable version of the 18-syllable mantra. Gopijana Balabhaya, Swaha. And he went so many places. He met so many sadhus. Of course, he had a particular swabhav. Even he went all the way to Dwarka by the power of his mantra. He met Narada there. Actually met Narada in Vaikuntha, and he followed him to Dwarka. There he met Uddhava. And they said, oh my God, look at this fellow. This Uddhava talked to Nard. Nard talked to Uddhava. He has a swabhav for Goloka. Woo! It's incredible. We have the opportunity to help facilitate his realizing that. They were so happy for him. They had their own bhav. They were perfectly happy, perfectly satisfied. And still they thought, that one's better. We have experience like that in the world, where we have our life and we're happy. And we wouldn't give it up for anything. Well, sometimes it feels like that. But we wouldn't give it up for anything. And so we hear about other people's lives that are better than ours, and we think, we're happy for them. We acknowledge, objectively speaking, it's better. They have more money. They have more influence. All kinds of, everybody loves them. Objectively, I can say their life is better than mine, but I'm not giving mine up. Even we have some semblance of this feeling in material life. This is the way of spiritual perfection also. Each jiva has his own perfection. And Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the first canto, is all about, I'm not moving. Hanuman's not changing his position from Ram. Never for a moment. You know the famous added story. Krishna was in Dwarka, and he sent Garuda to bring Hanuman. Hanuman landed, Garuda landed, said, Krishna's in Dwarka, he wants to see you, hop on. And he said, what? I'm busy right now, tell him I'll be there shortly. And Garuda's thinking, what kind of devotee is this? I got to go and give a report to Krishna. He flies back to Krishna, where is Hanuman? He said he was busy, he'd be here, later. So, Krishna said, well, go back and tell him that Ram wants to see him. So he flew back and he said, Ram wants to see you. And Hanuman said, okay, well, you go ahead. Now Garuda was really confused. He flew back. And as he's flying back, Hanuman's coming the other way. Ram! He jumped there before. He didn't want to wait on the slow train of Garuda. So he's never moving 1 inch from Ram Bhakti. Hanuman. You take Murari Gupta. He's the Hanuman of Gaur Leela. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tried to convince him to love Radha and Krishna. He would not move an inch from Ram Bhakti. And in Puri, he verse after verse after verse after verse after verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduces Murari Gupta to the devotees of Puri with such profuse and feelingful praise for Murari, the original biographer of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, classmate, elder, who he would debate with and defeat, and then reach out and touch Murari and electrify him. Murari was so attracted to him, but so angry with him for wasting his life in just scholarly pursuits and not taking up bhakti. And of course he took up bhakti. How the devotees felt, like Murari felt like. And there, he is a Gaur Bhakta and a Ram Bhakta, and he has deities of Gaur and Nityananda, and he gave them bows and arrows. I mean, he saw them as Lakshman and Hanuman. Lakshman and Ram. Ram Lakshman ki jai. Hanuman ki jai. And when in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Nara in the first canto comes to Ayodhya, he meets Hanuman, he said, "Oh, better than me are the Pandavas," or who was next in line? I think Pandavas. He goes to the Pandavas. Well, better than us is Uddhava. And Uddhava, better than me are the gopis. They're not moving. Uddhava, Pandavas, Hanuman, 1 inch from their own bhakti. So this is the teaching. And we see it, Gaur-Kishore told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the syllables of the Hare Krishna mantra, you will realize your swarup. There's a secular scholar, I should say, author, who also wrote something about Gaur-Kishore to give some support here. I would like to read, but I don't think I can find it. Anyway, believe me, Gaur-Kishore told him that by chanting this bhav will manifest. Your bhav will manifest. So this is the point of all this relative to the verse is that it's apparent from the verse, if we could remember it, that we're discussing, that Prabhupada developed, within him manifested Sakyabhav imbued with Madhurya by the grace of Bhaktisiddhanta. The grace, sadhana, these are the catalysts, right? And in him, therefore, we find this extraordinary wave of Sakyabhav that very much mirrors what Nityananda Prabhu was doing in his time, right? And widespread distribution of Krishna consciousness. Note here that in the verse we have said that forgive me, we have said what? Sheltered in Sharanagati, at the feet of Siddhanta Saraswati, and completely devoted to his guru's, at his guru's behest, to the seva of disseminating Gauravani. This is Prabhupada. Sheltered in Sharanagati, and doing the bidding of his guru, which was Gauravani Pracharane, as he wrote in his own pranam to himself, to distribute the message of Chaitanya, the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We saw earlier in the letter, the paraphrase of the letter of Bhaktisiddhanta about his own inner ideal, that he spoke of the mission itself and the management of the mission in this world in relation to internal spiritual life. Not that the two are separate. In other words, Prabhupada took up the order of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as he took it to preach in the Western world and publish books and so forth. And there's a lot involved in that. One fellow told me, "What is this with your guru? Flying an airplane going to United States, Rag Bhaktas, they do Madhukari in Vrindavan. I mean, can you imagine saying that to somebody? I mean, it's just what kind of person would say that to you? I mean, it's not, it lacks just basic, politeness and so forth. But anyway, I had an answer, of course. It said, where is the best place for Madhukari? Madhukari means like a bee who goes from flower to flower to get honey. Right? So, sadhus in Vrindavan, they do Madhukari. They go from house to house and beg whatever food they get. That's what they eat. It's very humble, no? It's a laudable practice. So I asked him, where's the best place for Madhukari? He said, oh, it's in this village over here. I said, what? Because they butter the chapatis there? You're not doing Madhukari. You're just trying to get a meal. My Guru Maharaj, he didn't go to Radhakund. He went to the Bowery in New York. He was a homeless person at 70 years old. Prabhupada left on March 12th, 1965, on the boat from Bombay, on Baladev Purnim. That's the day of my birthday, March 12th. A few years later, 1949. In the Holy Name Hospital, I was born. I joined the mission in 1972, on March 12th, the day that Prabhupada inaugurated dug the foundation stone for the Krishna Balaram temple. Some notes about myself, if you will, forgive me. What was the point? So.
Went to the Bowery, Madhukari.
Yes, he didn't know that there was no system in New York. If Prabhupada went to somebody's door with a bowl, what do you think they're going to give him? And if they were to give him food, what food would they give? It might be unedible in his own estimation. This is what he did. What did he live on then? My Guru Maharaj didn't eat. No. He honored prasadam, and he took the order of his guru as prasadam, as mercy, as grace. He lived on that, and the holy name, and the distribution of the holy name, which he said he thought he would give it out and see what happened, and then follow its lead. That's how his mission spread. So he's a very good example of Sharanagati. More than that, it is said in the Bhagavatam by Sukadev, upon recalling the intimacy of Krishna's friends with him in the Braj, somersaulting, wrestling with him, eating along the banks of the Jamuna, massaging his feet, herding cows. In many verses he speaks about the intimacy, and then he concludes, Itam satam brahma sukhanubhutya dasyam gatanam paradaivatena mayashritena naradarakena sakam vijaru krita punya punja. So if you want to know what is krita punya punja, stockpiles of beautiful activities, that it means in what holy place for how many lifetimes, executing super pious activities and austerity of bhakti did these boys undergo to attain this situation. His mind is just blown, Sukadev. And when he's thinking, what does it take what did they do to get here? We have the answer in the life of Prabhupada. What he did. That is Krita Punya Punya. That is his Madhukari. He went to New York. Homeless, penniless. He only had a box full of books, the Bhagavad. This is, again, as I say, this is a very extraordinary chapter of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And in the context of this, the Sharanagati on the boat, and his prayer, and so forth, all of this manifest within, this inner ideal manifested. So don't be deluded by these. Don't go live at Radhakund. That's what I'm saying to you. Try to do kirtan. Share the good tidings of Gaura Nityananda with others, and to give. That is to receive, right? And Prabhupada gave in no uncertain terms. Guravagyam shirasi dritva shaktivesha surupine Hare Krishneti mantrena paschacha prachatarane. Govinda Maharaj, under the direction of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, wrote this pranam for Prabhupada. It's meant to, it kind of focuses on Prabhupada's own pranam that he wrote in a hurry that has a grammatical error in it. It can never be resolved. Nirvisesha sunyavadi paschachate satarane. What is it? Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane. Saraswati Deve Devam. Either one is right. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane. Nirvisesha sunyavadi paschachate satarane. Most of you know it. It's grammatically, has a grammatical problem with it. But so what? What does the Bhagavad say? What is the verse of the Bhagavad? Tat-jat-tag visargo janatag viplavo yasmin pratislokam abhadavati api amani antasya nashon kitanayat shinvanti gayanti gunanti sadhu. Vyasa says, I'm writing this Bhagavad and there's probably some grammatical errors in it. Don't pay any attention to that. Try to feel what I'm trying to say, that words cannot contain. So if I say Hare Krishna, Jaga Moha, Jaga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Ratha Yatra, Jaga Moha, Jaga Gaja. Oh, he didn't pronounce Jagannath's name right. What kind of kirtan is that? That's the kind of kirtan we want, right? Right? Where the voice is choking. And so much the feeling is there that you realize the Upanishadic truth. This can't be contained in words. Let me make up a word. Something. That I can try to express it. Right? We want this kind of sadhusanga. That'll be a catalyst, would it? Will it not? Yeah? Here we have it in this verse. He says, taking shelter of the order of his guru upon his head, in such measure that he became divinely empowered, Shaktivesh Swarupine. He delivered both east and west by the means, the magic of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Govinda Maharaj really liked this because he thought, Prabhupada's verse says he delivered the Western world, but my verse says he delivered the Western and the Eastern world. He came back from the West with his white elephants, as he called us, and we were stunned that the how do you say it, the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it will go all over the world. My name will be chanted all over the world. It was fulfilled by Prabhupada. So, in this way, some thoughts on the second verse of the Prabhupadastakam. Thank you for your patience. Hare Krishna. Pranchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhudeva patitanam bhavanyo vaishnavibhinda anantakori vaishnavibhinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande.
No, there's not yet, but there will be two. There will be two more. And this one has pictures. Right at the end. Yeah, it's an appendix with all the mudras. Saragrahi drew all them. That's my favorite in Hindu. That would be wonderful. Let me get your. See, the problem is it's not so bad. Maybe
Bhakti Vilas ki jai. Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Bhakti Goswami ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Saragrahi Das ki jai. Bhakti Virta ki jai.
Okay.
Is that plus 44? Is that Poland?
Yes. No. Actually, I'll give you the English one.
Okay.
I have a better reception. This one.
Okay.